Blast off.
They're going to join.
We're now live on Channel 8 and YouTube.
Thank you very much, TCTV. Good evening. The time is now it's not 6:30, it's 7 p.m. Here's my first gaffe of the evening, starting off well. 7 p.m. I'm Chairman Mike Curry, and I'd like to call the Select Board Budget Meeting to order on the 16th day of March, 2022. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Right, or left. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we begin, I'd like to state for the record that not only are we being streamed live on TCTV, Cable Station 8, and our YouTube web platform, but this evening's recording will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. Please hit the subscribe and the bell. That way you know anytime we've got great programming or any municipal meetings. Just a quick roll call. It looks like we have a full house tonight. Good evening, everyone. Out in our guest tonight, John Clubbins is Templeton's representative to the Monty Tech. That's correct. All right, thanks for joining us, John. Really appreciate it. And we've got our support staff, town administrator, and everybody, so we're ready to go. We've got a short meeting tonight. Just a couple of agenda items, not a lot of the usual housekeeping like minutes, public comment, or board member comments, just very strict budget discussion items. As always, our agenda for this evening has been set no later than 48 hours out by law, and it is publicly available at the official source for town information, templetonma.gov. Although I have the discretion as chairperson to add and remove from the agenda, it has been set to allow for time, personnel resources, and public awareness. I reserve the right to move agenda items around to best fit our business and guests. Appreciate that. I think that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda. All right, this evening, we have until approximately 7:15, we can have our discussion and possible action. We'll talk about where we are with our budget items. I think Adam's got a couple of things to brief us and changes to the budget packet. At 7:15, we will have the Monty Tech FY'23 budget. 23? Okay, this is 22. Thing just caught that. And that's presentation and discussion. I will be pushing slides for that, and feel free, John, if you have anything.
I believe the superintendent and the business manager
Yep.
are going to join remotely.
Yeah. Yep. And at 8 o'clock approximately, or after their presentation, we'll have any discussion items for the draft warrant in legislative package. And we should be adjourning a little bit after 8 tonight. So let's get started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I thought it was a very productive meeting we had on Saturday. We went through and we discussed some highlights and some other areas to focus on and the like with the advisory committee. As you know, when I released the budget, I used a 2.5 escalator that the board approved back in 2020 for our education expenses. Narragansett Regional came on point to 2.5%, and Monty Tech actually came in lower than the 2.5% projected. So we were projecting an estimate of $654,750, and they came in at $603,535. This allowed me to bring our levy increase down to 1%. This is huge right here because when I released the budget, it was 1.75% of our proposition 2.5 cap. By us going up only 1%, we'll have roughly $168,000 in excess levy capacity moving forward. This, I had to make an adjustment to our allowance to abatements from 1.99% to 1.9%. And we were able to make that work. That's something substantial in this community. Since I've been here, I've never seen it done. This is something I know the board.
Save the recipe card, please.
Well, the board instructed me to level fund. I level funded the budget. The board also instructed me to separate out the ambulance receipts or ambulance expenses, which I did. And also, I made an adjustment to the select board because we are in a level funded budget. I decided to take out the pay increases for my staff of $8,500. I put the 2,500 of that into the reserve for CBAs because we have 3 collective bargaining agreements coming up at the end of this fiscal year. And then I applied the 5,000 to the highway 5,400 account for the concern of the gas increases. And then I also added, in addition to my the increase I already put in the snow and ice account, another $1,000 to catch up with that. Another thing from the meeting, because these were concerns that were brought up by both the select board and the advisory committee. So we made those adjustments to the budget book. That's why you have all those revised budget pages, which are also available online. We also, as we level funded the budget for the library, and because of the concerns from the director there, with the waiver, the $860 wasn't worth the risk of losing that state grant. So what we did is we took the $860 out of the insurance and benefits, which I felt was an appropriate cut considering the fact that you folks will be voting on the health insurance proposal, and the number we received for our renewal rate came to be 0% in a reduction on our dental. So that's why you see that lump sum disallowed in our insurance and benefits account. So a lot of good things happening here. Unfortunately, some costs like Worcester Regional that we can't control with the unfunded liability of retirement and the like, but we're doing everything we can to mitigate costs and at the same time provide the town with the best budget we can with the money we have available. And at the same time, I'm anticipating us having roughly $1.5 million in our OPEX stabilization after the annual town meeting roughly. So with that, I think it's been a pretty positive year. Not everybody's exactly happy with their budget, but like I talked to other departments, they all indicated they can make it work. And was the goal of this budget, is level fund, but make it work. And finding that balance, because remember, with the residents, they're going to be thrilled to see that the budget only went up overall with the excess levy capacity, or I should say property taxes went up 1%. Our budget went up 0%, the town budget. So it's a lot to be proud of. It took a lot of work, and we've come a long way. And if there's anybody has any particular questions for me, feel free to ask me, or if anybody wants to talk about the budget any further. I sent the revisions out, and like I said, they're already posted online.
Adam, great job on tackling those due outs and making it work. Certainly, Monty Tech's number, it was a pleasant surprise. So I am happy for that. And thank you and your staff for putting together all the change documents with all the page numbers at the bottom, so we can throw those in the right spot. So I appreciate that. Kind of running fast with scissors right now. So there are some things that were above and beyond due outs, but I think everybody had their own notes. I want to make sure that everybody has the option now while we're waiting. Well, we have all night. I mean, we have plenty of time before and after Monty Tech, but anyone wants to bring up anything or any additional questions for Adam, this is the time that we need to be able to make tweaks. So if you see something that you want to affect, or you have any concerns or a fix, let's do this now. Advisory, I'm not sure if anybody's watching. They're not meeting tomorrow. We're running fast with scissors on our way to try and lock down the annual town meeting warrant, so we can meet our bylaw obligations to get that to the advisory committee in time. But I also want to make sure that this is still an open budget book, and we still have the time. I don't want to drop anything on Adam's doorstep saying, fix this. I want more money here. We certainly have the capacity to do that, but I do not want to do it last minute. We have to have it in a good discussion. So with that, anyone on the board want to start? I do have a couple. All right, I will start. Adam, level funded budget. I was surprised a little bit to hear pay increases. I wasn't upset about it because you made it work. You gave us a budget that you were happy with. My question is, were we consistent within our budget guidance and our consistent for across the board for personnel that would be eligible? And when I say eligible, if they're not eligible because of an employee review, I get that. But were we consistent across the board with departments?
What I do is based on the wage and compensation study and the information I have now, I'm trying to get it within that 3-year period to the recommended levels. Unfortunately, with this budget, and I think the last time, I'm going off the top of my head here, when we had 3 collective bargaining agreements coming up, I had in my intergovernmental account 90, not mine at the time, but we had 90,000 in that account as opposed to 50,000.
Right.
But I'm going to do my best to make that work for not only the union folks, but the non-union folks.
All right, so that's union and non-union for that 5,600 that you.
5,600,
Yep.
50,000, correct.
So last year was 30,000, last year's budget, and this year it's 47,500. So it sounds like you're gearing up. You know, that's a 37% increase. So you're gearing up, ready for those collective bargaining agreements. I just want to stay close with what I was asking for non-union employees. Were you consistent across the board in pay increases?
As far as the study is concerned, correct.
Okay.
I'm doing my best to follow the independent study based upon the comparison communities that we adopted. We paid out of that state grant for
Okay.
that study to get done. I think it's important that we pay our physicians in accordance with that study.
Okay. I just want to stay away from any inconsistencies because above all else, I sit on the board and I want to make sure that you've got the tools to have an excellent staff that is appropriately paid. They go home feeling that they've made not only a great day's wage, but that they're being taken care of as well. The only other thing I have, I want to have a discussion about the floating hours that were disallowed from senior services. I heard the director of community services talk about how those are used and how they could be crucial to the running of a facility that has no FTEs at all. If you look at the wire diagram, it's all 0.5s. $4,500 represents 250 hours. I'm assuming those would go mostly for the activities coordinator.
Proposed senior center manager.
Exactly. Would they mostly go out of that or all out of that?
As far as I know, with the proposal, I've zeroed it out. But as far as I know, within that budget book that you see,
Yep.
those floating hours are for the senior center manager.
Okay. And that's a part-time employee. How did we, if we had it budgeted last year that where we had floating hours, how did, can you tell me how that worked? I know that you didn't start the floating hour concept. I know that. But how does floating hours work with a 19.5, but basically a part-time that Rubicon that we cannot pass, or else we wind up having to offer benefits. So how did that occur?
It has
Because
to,
maybe that helps me help you make a recommendation.
generally, when you have floating hours for a position, it's based more upon, you have a full timer in an office, for example, they know I got to use my vacation time, whatever it might be, they figure it out and they put the floating hours in. This is not the case regarding covering a full-time employee. This is a case of, with the money involved in increasing it in those hours, that could certainly make this position benefit eligible.
Right. But
My,
it hasn't in the past. Is that because like a gentleman or ladies agreement, gentleman and ladies agreement? I mean, in the past, if this employee had floating hours, or that position, I should say, had floating hours,
and how many of those floating hours are used?
I don't know. I don't know.
But if you add that many floating hours,
Let's say it was 5 out of the 250 allocated from the last year's budget. If it put them over 20 hours, they would be benefit eligible, right? And we have to guard against that. Like that's, I know that you watch that closely.
Mr. Chair, you mean consistently over 20?
Has to be
Well,
an
and we
average.
exploit-
It's an average.
An average.
Because you have
So one-
seasonal employees that will work more hours, but then they won't work throughout the rest. So they average out below that threshold.
Okay,
Is there any statute or guidance that we follow to make sure, like, if an employee comes back and says, I've been consistently doing 23 hours, you owe me benefits? I mean, is that,
Well, it has to work within what's the budget, what the budget has appropriated. So
oh,
generally,
okay,
when you have the budget and you folks decide on that, and you add additional money into a budget, then certainly a position could become benefit eligible. My job is to make a recommendation to you folks, and you ultimately decide on the budget. I know I do the budget in conjunction with
Yep.
you, but my recommendation would be to zero out the floating hours.
okay. But there's still capability there, you know, again, I have a concern when we all listen to the brief. For a center that has been so important for our community. I think they had 80 hours of walk-in last week. So I'm concerned about a drop in capability in that, but I also don't want to say, I'd like to add back the $4,500. And I would tell you, and I would make a recommendation on where you would find it. I wouldn't just tell you without doing my homework. But I don't also want to have the conversation where all of a sudden it puts you in a situation where now you have an employee's like, where are my benefits? Are they, is an employee able to waive to say, I don't want the benefits and work longer than 19.5,
Once they're eligible for the benefits.
whether they took them or not? I mean, it comes down to money. Because as soon as you go over that threshold, then you're like, I don't have that in my budget.
But can I also say too,
Yeah.
the board approved adding a temporary senior center assistant position there, funded by the formula grant, which is not coming directly out of the budget. It's a temporary position based upon that grant. So we've made strides in a direction where we've been putting more hours into staff at that center. I don't want there to be a misconception out there that we haven't funded. I think we've built up since we did the restructuring, that department. And take note, and I do appreciate the volunteers that they have over there that are putting in their hours as
Yeah.
well. But at the same token, I have to look at, as the budget manager for the town, what's the best approach? And my recommendation to you would be to zero out those floating hours
Based on what?
based on the amount of hours we've already added there.
Does anyone else have any thoughts on that in terms of capability from the senior center? I
I'm
get the
shocked,
feel,
so they're gonna lose.
I don't get the sense that they have what they need.
No, I'm shocked, yeah, I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
Time when the demand and the need is there and they're running short staffed, it's not adding up in the big picture.
But that's not what Adam just said. Adam says that they're adequately staffed because of the addition of.
A couple of years ago, we did increase a lot of hours positions. It was starting to build up. And so to some degree, I see what Adam's trying to say is now it's like leveled to where it should be fitting correctly
You're all right with no full-time employee there?
with no full-time.
I know that I'm not advocating in this budget cycle to do
Right.
it, but it may be something that we need in the future, rather than a part-time, full-timer. That's essentially what the community service director does, is a part-time, full-timer for that facility.
If I may, Mr. Chair, the thing that I would like to see is, and it's not a plan per se, but is a record of if they've increased activity, is it people going there looking for assistance from employees, or are they looking for assistance in other ways to utilize the formula grant? And I know it does allow for, have salaries and things, but I've seen it abused in the past, and I just don't want to repeat that, because to me, I think it takes away from, if seniors come there looking for something, whether it be, maybe they for food or for this or that, I would hate to see the funds go. And I know sometimes you have to have people to help them out, but I guess I would like to see a record of the services and the reasons people are, there's an increased flow of traffic, what they are going there for. So I know, get an idea of what the seniors are looking for. And if we have to make adjustments at special town meeting in October, November, when we're gonna have it, then we could do it then. Presumably with the formula grant, because I don't think it's gonna get burned up all between here and there, unless they start don't use it for a lot of events or things. And that's why I'm hesitant about funding a position with that grant, because I have seen it abused several occasions in different ways. One time, a person just gave himself a raise trying to use it, and it was caught. But I mean, Pennsylvania was going to charge it off to the grant, and to me, that grant is more aimed to, if seniors are going there looking for things, that they need assistance with, maybe they need a ride, maybe they need this, that, or other thing. Again, I would like to see a record of when, what's, if you got 30 more people coming in this way, or you have 30 hours of senior seeking services, well, what are they looking for?
Right.
And how are you, how do you want to address that? What's the parameters? And then, like I said, if it continues and there's a real need there to help them, because it is a growing population, all I gotta do is look at the numbers, many area towns.
Yeah,
Then we
it's
could
the kind of
adjust this.
population that also advocate. I mean, they're the people who show up to our town meetings
And there, a lot of times, they gotta be hard pressed to show up to ask,
yeah.
because.
Jeff, this is precisely why I wanted to bring it up. If we have a department, if we have chatter from our own staff that something doesn't feel right, and that we're properly manning, funding or otherwise, that should be the first, that's the reconnaissance. The worst part is if we're not helping our constituents and we wind up just getting angry emails afterwards, that's after the fact. I'm looking at it from a proactive perspective to say, we've got the budget here. If we have something that we can fix based on the intel that we have right now, I want to seize the opportunity. But also, I hear what Adam's saying about trying to get the structure right, trying to align us with wage and compensation study and the usefulness of those hours, like you were talking about.
So it's just what I would.
All right, I'm gonna think on it a little bit more. I definitely appreciate, I mean, we can't have the discussion any other time, so this is where we,
But, I
yeah.
mean, and I don't really like to do it that way, but it could always be,
Can you tell Kathy that the listing looks awesome?
I did.
Oh, you did, okay. Jean found some typos, but I assume she's gonna fix those, right?
The only thing she did is look, she had master bathroom.
Looks like we're gonna do the money tuck break.
Picture of the master bathroom.
That was good.
Wish you.
we should certainly.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Okay,
budget,
bye.
we-
ATM,
And we found
Yeah.
something.
Tammy?
You can't let them know we're here then.
All right, you muted her.
What?
Someone muted her.
Oh, yeah, there.
Yeah, that was Hannah.
Hannah, thanks, Hannah.
So Sheila Harity, business manager,
yes.
and Tammy,
Tammy Crockett is the business.
Oh, I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry,
Superintendent.
I had it backwards, sorry. Tammy and Sheila, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can.
Excellent. Would you like to push, did you, when you, for your presentation tonight, did you want to push slides or do you want me to push them?
I would love if you would do it. I think it would be a lot smoother than me.
Okay.
I apologize. I was just talking to my husband. I didn't realize I wasn't on mute.
Oh, I heard the listing looks awesome. I've got the document, now I've got the presentation. Let me share my screen. What happens when I do this?
Perfect.
Oh, there we go. Did that work?
It does.
All right.
Great. I'm just going to, hi, I'm Sheila Harity, and Tammy and I are going to present to you this evening. I just have a few slides of high-level points that I just want to point out to you about COVID and what we've done this past year with the budget and the dollars, and what we're planning on proposing to you this evening in the budget that Tammy will present to you right when I finish my slides.
Okay,
So on
thank
this,
you.
great. On the second slide, some of the high points. We, in addition to our budget, we know it's very expensive to run a vocational school with major equipment items. So every year, the governor has supported the Capital Skills Grant, and we received $250,000 in the welding fab program. But in addition to that, I thought it was important to share with you that we also write for other grants as well. One that we're really proud and have done a lot of work at the school supporting is our students' social and emotional well-being. And I should really expand on that to include our staff. You know, going through COVID was certainly challenging for everybody. And we've conducted a survey for our students and staff in regards to their social and emotional well-being and what the district can do to help support them. And it's a teacher-run committee that has been working on this, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And they make the recommendations to the administration for execution. On the following slide, in regards to the FY’23 budget, we're hoping to continue to provide supplemental student support during the time so that we can address student loss. In the 21-22 school year, we certainly, although we're very proud that our school remained open throughout the pandemic, we actually had 700 students in the school every single day. 3 days a week, they were in their vocational program. 2 days a week, they were in their academics, and the rest were remote. It was really important for the students to have a resemblancy of a normal teenage life, and very proud about that. But also we know that it wasn't a typical school year. So that was important that we've been addressing the students' learning loss as well as their social and emotional well-being. We also replaced the original generator when Monty Tech was built. It was installed, and really proud to say that we finally got a new generator. We updated our HVAC units specifically to improve the air quality. And thank goodness we had a one-to-one Chromebook initiative already in place. So when we had to pivot to remote learning that original first year in the spring when COVID had hit, we already had the infrastructure, the technology, and the knowledge, at least, of how to incorporate technology into the classrooms. So although not a full aspect of it, at least we had some groundwork that we could build upon, but definitely needed to increase the technology in regards to purchasing additional Chromebooks and configuring 2 new firewalls and so forth.
Dr. Harity, did you have to increase staff when you did that?
For the technology, no.
No, wow. Yeah, and Dr. Harity, I failed to mention when you started, I just want to let you know that John Columbus is here in the audience.
Hi, John.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. So on the next slide after that, we did in this upcoming budget that we'll be presenting for goals and initiatives. So the contractual COLA increase was 1.5%. The health insurance was increased by 5%. And your staffing question was about technology, not in regards to staffing for COVID, correct?
That's an interesting way that you said that. So the first part, yes, but because of COVID, I know that like IT exponentially came on, so I don't know how you might have categorized. But yeah, I guess my question was, did you have to hire, based on your expanded IT necessity, did you have to hire any additional staff because of the COVID-related IT?
No, we didn't have to. So I did answer correctly. I just wanted to make sure, because I am talking about staffing now in regards to COVID, but in a more general perspective. But in regards to the IT, we had purchased and then we continue to lease at this point, the 1,400 Chromebooks for our students, and then another, say 150 for our staff. We did that more than 5 years ago. So we had and again, the same staff. We did an extensive amount of professional development and had the teachers in on the selection and really driving what the PD should look like, because we didn't want to just put the Chromebooks in their hands without really offering the opportunity to see what you can actually do with it. So all that happened. We did then, during that time, hire a tech facilitator in the educational realm. So, but again, that was over 5 years ago. Ellen Gamble, she's fantastic. She actually goes into the classrooms and helps the teachers incorporate the technology and various platforms. And she's been phenomenal. So, but for this upcoming budget, we're going to continue, even though we had increased staffing because of health concerns and classroom spacing and so forth. We're going to continue because we do need the science instructor to continue to have the science instructor, the 0.5 phys ed, 0.5 social studies, and 0.5 custodial. We're going to continue to support our students' social emotional well-being. And I've certainly said that I feel like this is the tip of the iceberg in regards to what our students' needs will be, and our staff coming through this pandemic, and hopefully coming into, again, the normalcy, which feels at this moment really good. And we're also transitioning to a new student information system. We have the old Aspen X2 system, and it has not been user-friendly, to say the least. And in fact, when we talked with the faculty about switching over to PowerSchool, we actually looked at various student management systems. And when we talked about it, the faculty actually applauded because they were so frustrated with our present system. Usually there's always resistance and change, but not in this venue, to say the least. So full steam ahead, even though it's a very heavy lift, it's a lift that everybody's willing to participate in.
Great.
And additional goals, student supplemental learning supports. We want to continue to fund and enhance summer learning programs and after-school programs for our students, both in academics and vocational programs, again, to address the learning loss. Renovate and update a science lab in a classroom. Again, the building's 50 years old, so we've been every couple of years trying to tackle and update various vocational program areas, but in addition to that, in the academic areas, the science labs are in serious need. We're renovating. I'm sorry.
My daughter is in 7th grade at Narragansett, so we went to the open house the other night, and it was the first time that I had free reign of your entire building. And I
Yeah,
was, on that fact of it's 50 years old, but in terms of trying to keep up with upgrades, like the dental, you're talking about the dental lab. I was impressed with the maintenance of it.
thank you. We appreciate that. And this third bullet actually speaks to the dental assistant program. We received an additional $150,000 from the skills grant for additional equipment upgrades so that we can actually get, you can read all the various new pieces of equipment that we'll be receiving through this grant. So we're thrilled to continue to teach our students the most and train them on the most current technologies and equipment within the industry. And then we have plans in our capital improvement to, unfortunately, the front canopy of the main building is pulling off. We had a facilities assessment done right before COVID had hit, and that was a high priority, flagged as something we needed to address. We need to do some HVAC control upgrades for the air quality and continue to work on that. The design, we're in the process of it for next year of designing a new daycare center. Like we had done with the veterinary clinic, we designed it and built it ourselves. And we hope to pioneer our second initiative like that. And we were going to do it. We were in the process of putting things together, and then COVID had hit, unfortunately. And then continue to, one section at a time, pave a different section of our parking lot at Monty Tech. And at this point, I'll hand it over to Tammy for her budget part of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so I get the fun part of talking about how we pay for all these things. Before I start this, though, I do want to thank the board very much for allowing Dr. Harity and myself to present to you tonight via Zoom. We literally just came technically from another town. We presented to Sterling at 6:30 via Zoom. So we were able to quickly click over and click on to this. So again, we really appreciate that accommodation so that we were able to still keep a schedule with your town.
No problem. Thanks, Tammy.
So I always, because the state budget really is the driving force behind Monty Tech's budget. As you know, you've heard me say this year after year. I like to start my presentation with what's going on, what's driving our budget. So this is House 2, Governor's budget. For FY23, you can see they're planning about a $485 million increase over FY22. Also with this budget, it reflects some new higher foundation budget rates. And as I've done in the past, I'll show you the foundation budget. You can see the 5 categories that are getting additional increases above inflation to them. This is all due to the Student Opportunity Act, which was enacted a couple years ago at the legislature. And it's designed to increase foundation budget rates in certain fields, as you see. And it's designed to help bridge the equity gap for subgroups and for economically disadvantaged districts and the different groups. So that's the reason behind the act. And it does keep increasing the foundation budget. And again, the House 2 also, what I just talked about for those 5 rates, it's closing that gap by a 6th. There was a 7-year plan and we're in year 2 of it. On the next slide, you can see, so we just talked about some of the foundation budget rates got additional increases above inflation. So again, fixed charges, which is employee benefits, got an increase of 4.51%. It's only it's based on you can see here, 3-year premium increase for the GIC plans. This was always the category where a lot of districts complained that it was underfunded because it wasn't keeping up with the cost of health insurance. The other line is special education. For the rest of the foundation budget lines, they received a 4.5% increase, which was the inflation factor. Again, inflation was higher than that, but it was capped at this. And then the state also changed the assumed percentage rates for special ed and district students from 4.75% to 5% for vocational schools and 3.75 from 3.75 to 4% for non-vocational students. And you'll see that on the next slide. The next one is a snapshot of our foundation budget. So everything I just talked to you about is shown here numerically. So the foundation budget rates that get factors of inflation factors applied to them is 1 through 11, administration, instruction, classroom teachers, etc. Then going across from 1 through 7, this is the different categories of education. Each category has a different rate applied to it. Vocational getting the highest rate applied to it because it's the most expensive form of regular education. So we do what comprehensive districts do, as well as operate, in our case, 21 programs. So the foundation enrollment number is at the top, 1467. This was our foundation enrollment number as of October 1. And the definition of foundation enrollment is the number of students that live in our communities, 18 communities that attend Monty Tech, as well as the students that reside in our 18 communities that attend other vocational schools, also known as school choice. And the third component is we have a Chapter 74 certified practical nursing program, and any students enrolled in that from district towns gets added into that number as well. Then that number gets multiplied out by the rates for each of lines 1 through 11. And that's where they come up with that first category of spending. Columns 8 through 13 are duplicative students that are built into the 1467, but you get additional money above the base for each of these categories of pupils because they come with higher costs of educating. So on the last slide, I told you that the state increased what they call the assumed percentage of special ed in districts. So they increased that number by vocational and the non-vocational schools. This is so low. We're reflected at 71 students because it's reflective of a 5% of our enrollment. We have in the upper 200s for special education students, as well as if you look at any other school district, this is going to be very low compared to the actual number of pupils they have. But this gets a bump, what they call an incremental cost above base. Then you can have your EL students. We're in column 12. We have 9 EL students. So we get an incremental base bump for those pupils. Then low income. These are your economically disadvantaged pupils. We have 553, which is approximately 39% of our pupil population. And we get additional bump above that. All those factors get added up, and it drives our foundation budget. You can see at the bottom of column 14, $27,936,176 is Monty Tech's foundation budget for FY'23. That translates to $19,043 per pupil of spending. That's the minimum we must spend per pupil. So this does not include transportation of students, capital costs, and debt service. But you'll hear me talk a lot about these numbers again. The next slide just shows you a comparison of our focusing to the right of where we are in FY'22 to where we're going in FY'23. Foundation enrollment increased by 6 pupils. Our foundation budget increased by $2 million, which is significant to Monty Tech's budget increase. I just showed you how that was calculated. The next column, required district contribution. That's the required contribution from all 18 communities, the minimum to Monty Tech, and that's based on each community's ability to pay as established by the state. And I'll be showing you Templeton's in a moment. Our Chapter 78 increased to 17,220,222, or approximately 1.7 million. And our required net school spending increased to our foundation budget number, which is that 27,936,176. You can see that this is just shy of a $2 million increase for us, or a 7.66% increase. Monty Tech is close to net school spending. We maintain it as close as possible. So you're going to see these numbers reflective of our total budget. And that's why I like to start off with these screens for you. The next slide will show you what's going on with all of our 18 communities, foundation enrollment versus the required minimum as established by the state. So you can see for Templeton, foundation enrollment goes from 89 to 87, which is a decrease of 2 students. And the required minimum contribution decreased to 570,693, or 33,748. And you can see how the rest of the communities play. On the next slide, it's going to show you the precise calculations as to how the state came up with Templeton's required minimum contribution. So starting from the left, the 2020 equalized valuation, that's property valuation. That's what the state has said Templeton's property valuation is. The property percentage on line 2.3624, that's a percentage that they use for every community, irregardless. And they strictly do a multiplication and they come up with line 3, 2.6 million. That's what the state calculates Templeton can contribute towards their schools based on their property valuation. The next line 4 is 2019 income, again, set by the state for Templeton. The uniform income percentage, the 1.5242%, that's the standard percentage that they're using for every community in the Commonwealth. They do the multiplication and say Templeton's local effort from income is the 3,571,014. They take line 3 and 6 and they add them up and they say, Templeton, we think you can afford to pay towards all of your school districts $6,222,999. The foundation budget line 8, 16 million. That's the foundation budgets of Gansett, Templeton, Monty Tech, attributed, Gansett and Monty Tech, attributed to Templeton. So that's what Templeton represents from both schools. The maximum amount that you could contribute towards that is the 13 million. They want every school or every community in the Commonwealth to get some state aid, even if it's an extremely wealthy community. So moving over to the right, the state says, okay, what is Templeton paying? What did we require them to pay minimally this year, FY22? And in this case, it's 5,411,111. Then the Department of Revenue puts a municipal revenue growth factor. I always say, don't shoot the messenger on these slides because these are all determined by the state. So they say Templeton's is 1.86. They multiply that out and they come up with a required preliminary contribution of the 5511758. Well, compared to line 7, this is a shortfall. So the state says, oh, well, how much is the shortfall? 711,241. That is a 4.4% shortfall. Looking at line 23, if your shortfall is in between 2.5 and 7.5%, the state is adding an additional percentage to your contribution rate. So the 54,111 represents 1% of line 13 of what you're currently paying. They add that to what they've calculated your preliminary number to be in line 15, and that's how they come up with line 26. What is Templeton going to be required to pay for their minimum contributions to both Narragansett and Monty Tech? 5,565,869. The next slide will show you how that gets divvied out between Narragansett and Monty Tech. I'm looking at the FY23 half, lines 5 through 9. You can see the foundation enrollments attributed to each school and the foundation budget. So how they come up with Templeton's foundation budget for Monty Tech is they take the 87 pupils and they multiply it by that 19,043 number we saw per pupil spending on the foundation budget slide. So they do that for Narragansett and multiply the 1094 by Narragansett's foundation budget per pupil number. And that's how they come up with the total foundation budget attributed to Templeton. And they say, what percentage of that total is Monty Tech? 10.25%, and Gansett is 89.75. So then what they do is they take line 5, which is what they calculated to be your requirement to pay this coming year, 5,565,869. They take 10.25% of that for Monty Tech, and that's how they determine the required contribution to Monty Tech from Templeton for this coming year, 570,693. And again, that's a 33,748 decrease from the current year. The next slide shows a comparison of Templeton over the past 2 years. So I talked about foundation budget. We just went through required minimum contribution. The next couple of slides are going to talk towards the transportation, operating, and capital portions. This is Templeton's apportionate share of our transportation and operating costs, as well as Templeton's apportionate or amounts that's apportioned to Templeton for our capital, to come up with a total proposed assessment of 603,535. And you can see to the right, that represents assessment per pupil to Templeton of 6,937. And you can look at the comparisons for the 2 years. The next slide is going to show you our total budget summary. And this is where I'll talk to you more about the transportation and capital piece. So net school spending. You've seen this number on our state aid calculation sheet, 27,936,176. That's our requirement, went up 7.66%. The next piece is our transportation costs. This is for the 31 buses we contract with to transport pupils to and from Monty Tech every day from our communities. FY23 is going to be year 1 of our new bus contract. So I'm actually very pleased that it's only a 6.79% increase. Other communities were seeing increases in the double digits. So although that seems like a lot, I still felt it was somewhat manageable. Above net school spending, you can see that the committees are proposing only being 60,000 above our requirement, because they recognize that the net school spending requirement went so high for our communities. The next piece is our capital budget. We're proposing 435,000, and I'll talk to you about what's in that budget on another slide, and vehicles of 50,000. So that gives us a total proposed budget for FY23 of 30,796,896. So you can see it's a almost $2.2 million increase, or 7.66% increase, which is what our net school spending requirement went up by. So really we're driven significantly by that number. Our estimated Chapter 70, I showed you how that was calculated on the state page, and the required minimums 10,715,954. Again, that was calculated by the state. The next component is our transportation and other. That's the 2,375,720. So that is from above, and that's our transportation plus our above net school spending, how we get that number. We subtract from that the estimated transportation aid that was on our cherry sheets for this year. That's a decrease for 23 of 150,000. We're hoping in the final state budget that we'll see some increases to the regional transportation aid. We don't expect it'll be a lot of increase, but that number could hopefully go up. We're also proposing to put 75 or use 75,000 in our regional transportation fund. You can see that's a decrease from the current year. How that money gets in there is when we receive, Monty Tech receives transportation aid above what we budgeted for that year. So the current year we're in, FY22, for example, if we receive above that 1.7 million that's budgeted, the school committee votes to authorize me to put the additional funds into our regional transportation account. And then what that fund is used for is to offset the following year's community assessments. Well, at this point, we don't know if we're going to get more transportation aid than we budgeted. So we put a conservative number of 75,000 in there. We're waiting to see if some of these supplemental fundings from FY22 include increases to regional transportation, which there's been rumors to be. So that number could as well increase in the final budget version that we usually put out around August, September, October, after we get the final state budget. And excess and deficiency between using it here to offset and under capital to offset, we're proposing to use $600,000 of our E&D, which is a $50,000 increase from FY22 of excess and deficiency funds to offset assessments. So that's how the numbers are driven. The next slide is just going to give you a little more information. Our excess and deficiency account was certified by DOR at $1,089,827 or 3.9%, which we're allowed, regionals are allowed to have up to 5% in there. And we're proposing to use 600,000 of that to reduce our FY23 assessments. We put a small amount into our stabilization fund each year. It usually runs between 25,000 and 35,000. And we're trying to build this up in order to be able to use it for medium capital expenditures so that we don't have to have a spike in our capital expenditure line to our communities. So we would be saving this up to be more of the 600,000-ish or better capital improvements, which we do have in our capital plans in the future. As well as our, I'm sorry?
Tammy, when you say like a medium capital cost, is the generator that you just replaced, would that be classified as medium, light, or heavy?
The generator was, believe it or not, actually more on the light side. We do have some other larger, like, sorry, I'm drawing a blank on our capital plan here. But we do have some other upgrades that we will have to be doing in the future that could be more like the $500,000-$600,000 mark, as opposed to the generator we spread over 2 years and it was about 300,000.
Maybe something more like the canopy.
Yes, and while we're actually speaking, I'm pulling up my capital plan, and so I will give you some of those in a second. And as in the third bullet, I just wanted, because our ESSER funds are significant, I just wanted to point those out to you. Oh, here we go. So we need to, our electrical main gear, which is the infrastructure, that's a high needs on our facility assessment. And that's approximately 750,000 minimally. So it would be more to that type where we would focus this towards. So our ESSER 3 or American Rescue Plan, COVID funds, however you know it, our ESSER 3 funds for this coming year are $1,464,932, and we're planning to utilize those funds to do some more of the, we're going to do HVAC upgrades. These are the controls. You know, we upgraded the units a few years ago with that big energy plan, but we have to update a lot of the controls to even increase the energy efficiency. So we'll be doing that. We're adding some new ventilation systems into like welding and cabinet making who have poor quality of air. We're doing like touchless faucets and whatnot in bathrooms. So we're mostly using this to do those one-time investments that'll last us a while because we recognize this is one-time money.
Understood.
Okay, then the next slide just shows you our and foundation enrollment for this year, how it was based. So we currently have 1,404 actual students enrolled at Monty Tech. We have 53 school choice out students, and we have 10 practical nursing students that are built into that 1,467. The right side represents school attending children. And this is how a community assessment, this is how your capital is assessed. So we receive these numbers from your community's superintendents, and it's for students who are in grades 1 through 12. And these are the numbers, like I said, we get from your superintendents, and it's the basis for your capital assessment. So the next slide shows you how those numbers break out percentage-wise. So for operating, Templeton represents 5.93% of Monty Tech for FY23. For capital, Templeton represents 4.04%. I should also point out, this is how your quota for the freshman class is established by the capital percentage line. So when the school committee sets a quota for the freshman class, as they did at the last meeting of 370, Templeton's freshman quota for this coming year would be 4.04% of that. That's how your quota is established. The next slide shows how the assessments break out. And again, I showed you Templeton, so 87 pupils. The foundation enrollment that's attributed to Templeton, again, that's the pupils times 19,043. We saw how the required minimum contribution was calculated by the state. So the transportation and operating, that's from the budget summary. That would be the transportation line less the revenues, coming up to the total transportation and operating assessment net, which is 376,464. And then I said Templeton represents 5.93% of that. So that's where the 22,334 comes in. And then the other component is the capital, and that would be our capital plan, less the excess and deficiency that we would be putting towards that, which leaves the net of 260,000. And Templeton represented 4.04% of that, and that's where the 10,508 comes in. Add those columns up, and it would come to the proposed FY23 assessment for Templeton of 603,535. It's just shy of a $3,800 decrease from the current fiscal year. Next slide is to show you our spending comparisons from year to year. Some highlights for this is in each function, you'll see that our instructional technology goes up. Again, we're purchasing more technology these days to first keep up with the growing demands, but also as we've purchased technology in the past for like CAD drafting, all of our vocationals, they keep requiring more software, more infrastructure. So we see those accounts building. Another line in the, of course, Dr. Harity told you about our COLAs, our 1.5% throughout our collective bargaining agreements. So that would be the increases for our salaries throughout the functions. Also in the teaching function, textbooks and instructional materials were back in person 100%. So we were able to decrease our spending projections for FY22, but we need to increase it for FY23. Things are super expensive. You know for yourself, anything you buy now, we're buying copper, wood, metal, pipes. Everything is crazy expensive. So that's where we see a lot of those costs really being driven, is for our vocational programs. The next section, again, it's our student transportation. I told you that was a first year of our new contract. Custodian, again, that's contractual. Again, increases to the technology lines. Employee benefits, Dr. Harity mentioned, we have a 5% premium increase budget for both our active and retired employees, because health insurance certainly doesn't go down ever. And our capital plan increases, and as well as our school choice. Our school choice out is the tuition to other districts. Again, that's based on the kids who are attending other vocational schools, what we're required to pay. So that's kind of the breakdown of where our spending is and kind of the highlights of the large increases. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you and your committee have.
What do you think, team?
Very well presented. Transportation takes up a lot of money in every town, doesn't it?
Sure does. Sure does.
I don't have any questions, sir. I like 603 better than 607. That's all I have to say. Very
Good
Jeff?
job.
All set. Well, Tammy, go ahead, John.
I just quickly on the transportation, you have to realize you're doing 18 towns from Boylston up to Sterling.
Absolutely, yeah. Transportation takes up a huge budget with any school. Yeah, it's well realized. It's a lot of money.
Any further questions? Well, I hope we're the last town that you have tonight. Sterling, Templeton, tonight. But Dr. Harity and Tammy, good to see you both again. Thank you very much for the brief. And thanks for the certified number. We're in the receipt and we're happy, and good night.
Thank you for having us. We
Thank
appreciate
you. Yes, thank you very much.
it. Bye.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye, John.
Hi, John.
Okay. Anything else on Monty Tech FY23? Thanks. Good night, John. Yep. All the stuff that they've been briefing over the past couple of years, especially the veterinary clinic, I had no idea. They've got a pretty good facility over there. Money well spent. Just walking through almost every single area. I didn't get to masonry. It's just so much stuff. I think the first thing I saw was cosmetology. And that was a bit like, wow, they really do that here. It was pretty cool.
And
the
try
graphic
lunch
stuff
there.
on it.
Oh, you ate lunch?
Yeah, gotta go there for lunch sometime. Excellent food.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Excellent
my
food.
mother actually was a home ec teacher in my town growing up, and she ran the restaurant. Nothing as big as that, but it was interesting. Actually, it's probably the biggest kitchen I've ever seen.
Beautiful.
Giant there. And they produce all the meals there. Okay. All right, Monty Tech done. We've got a discussion related to the draft warrant and legislative package. Did you want to leave that off with that?
Oh,
That's yours, right?
correct. So you want to start by going through each article, Mr. Chair, or how do you want to proceed, or the board? Be free for any questions for each one. Because you're all voting on the final warrant next week, so. I'll just a minute. So. Article 1.
Page 280. Sorry, I don't have my PDF open. I'll give you the number for the PDF. So paper copy 281.
281, Article 1. This is where we do our fiscal year 2022 operating budget amendments. This year, I'm anticipating snow and ice, we're at 150,000 plus. But I'm gonna ask town meeting for is 150. And it looks like we'll have to do a transfer at the end of the year. So you might remember last year, we didn't have to do any transfers, but the end of fiscal year 23, excuse me, 22, looks like we're gonna have to do a transfer for the snow and ice. Fortunately for us, we got the premium holiday with our insurance and benefits. So we got saved by that decrease in health insurance.
I'm sorry, so the highlighted figure, it's not 105, it's 150?
150 for snow and ice, and I'm looking at 20,000 for select one. So you're looking at 170,000.
Okay.
And on that snow and ice, it's gonna need a transfer at the end of the year too.
That's not a lot for snow and ice.
150? Oh, no, that's last year. I didn't update it. That's why it's.
Oh, it's
highlighted.
updated up top. Okay.
It's highlighted in the draft.
No, we're talking about snow and ice, but when I'm a little, I wanted to understand why you took so much out of the treated salt.
All those accounts were allowed to deficit spend, Terry.
Oh, that's right, I forgot. All right, yeah, I remember now. Okay.
So, I mean, what I highlighted earlier, we did, because we had a concern about that, I added an additional 1,000 to that.
Okay.
Anything else on Article 1?
No.
Article 2 is a consent agenda. Pretty standard language. I decreased the community services fund from 60 to 30,000. That was the year where we're looking at doing some summer camp and then COVID hit. But 30,000, I think even if they wanted to get a camp going, that's a pretty good number to work with. I felt that to be more
What was the,
appropriate.
I'm sorry, what was the reduction?
30,000 from 60 to 30. And if I remember last year, we went up on the plumbing and
Community
gas.
services.
And electric, community services, correct. And then last year, we went up on plumbing and gas inspector fund and the electrical inspector.
Right.
Due to all the building in town. Anything else on Article 2?
So just COVID on the community service, don't basically cutting it in half.
Correct.
You said that primarily by COVID enrollments. I'm sorry, what was?
What happened was that was proposed to increase it to the 60,000 when we're looking at doing that summer camp. And then remember the COVID hit and it messed up the whole plan for that. So we went pretty high with that number. So I think the safe number would be 30,000.
So you don't think we're gonna return to that level of service?
I just think that if that were to arise where we have to get over 30,000, we would just have to adjust that number with the joint meeting of the select board and advisory committee. So that number could always change. It just requires us to have both boards meet to increase it. But I think 30,000 is sufficient based on past years. Anything else on that one?
No, we're on page 290, I'm sorry, 291 on the PDF.
Okay, so Article 3, this is amending the bylaws regarding the advisory committee. This is to streamline the language and get it where it lays out the goals of the advisory committee and what they do with joint meetings, or to have joint meetings with the select board, as well as decrease the membership from 7 to 5. That was a recommendation within the Department of Revenue's report. I think we talked about this quite a bit and we had support amongst the board for that.
Jeff, are you good? We good with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Jeff is my moral compass for advisory committee bylaws. So honestly,
Jeff likes
he
writing.
understands. it way more than
Anything else on Article 3?
I didn't.
And I'm pretty sure that the advisory committee already basically support most of the language. I think they just wanted to change it, one section,
Yeah,
annual to fall or something.
yeah, it's just it's revisiting everything, all the work that we've done. It's just revisiting it to say, what can I think back now? Understood.
Well, didn't. Yeah, you gotta do it too. You guys.
Article 4 is to delete bylaw chapter 22-6. This is for, I believe that's on my head, it's a redundant language. I think it's mentioned in 2 places. Is that right, Jeff? So we're just deleting that because it's listed twice. The
Yes.
bylaws in different
Yes.
sections. Any questions on Article 4?
Give me 2 seconds. So it's a review of warrant articles by advisory committee. And we're deleting the entire thing.
22-6.
Just look up at your screen for a sec. So that's, can you read that or?
So that would be deleted.
It's redundant because it says it in the advisory committee section. Jeff?
Yes. That 22.6.
Yeah.
So that's under the proposed section under section 9-4, review of warrant articles within our proposed change, which where it covers that section.
9-dash what?
4.
Okay. I'm good with it. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, article, are we good on Article 4?
Mhm.
Okay, Article 5, this is something that Tim and I worked on with the town council. I believe the problem we had was the last meeting of the capital improvements committee, the minutes, because they have that period of time where nothing happens. This provides a mechanism where the chair can approve the minutes within it, and to update some other language within it. Tim, is there anything you wanted to add on it? Or is it?
This is a problem that plagued a number of communities around the Commonwealth, and this was how council suggested we close the gap. And just when we do the presentation, as we did in December, we vote as the committee then that the meeting minutes of that meeting will be approved by the chair. That way we don't have a set of meeting minutes hanging till the end of the annual town meeting. The new committee, when they form August, September timeframe, their first order of business was to approve a set of meeting minutes that they had nothing to do with. So it's just cleaning up, dotting the i's, crossing the t's, and not leaving one set of meeting minutes unapproved for a number of months.
Thanks.
Yep.
Good to go.
So that one, it's highlighted, but we've reviewed it and it's gonna be that's gonna be the same language. Okay, are we good with Article 5?
Good.
Article 6, this is a sale of parcel of town land. This is a piece of property sitting on, if you look at 19 Central Street, just a parcel of land that's sitting there. It's actually a parking lot in between some land, in between the, you can pull it up, Mike, it's quite easier to.
Get this off.
So for reference, you got
Right there. yeah.
Thirsty Turtle.
Right there.
Yep.
And then you have that other garage right next to it. And the town owns this property right here that isn't on the tax roll, so it gives an opportunity for the town to sell off that piece of property. Or go out to bid, and if anybody bids on it. And it's at the edge of parking lot there. That wooded area.
Right there behind the dumpster.
I mean, it could be a little bit further, but that's roughly, yes.
Okay.
Basically, the town's not doing anything with it, so we might as well have an opportunity to put it back on the tax rolls. Granted, we still have to follow the procurement process like we did with all those other properties we've had that we went out and sold.
That's roughly the area where the old train trestle used to be.
Right next to
it. And the abutments, yeah.
Kind of was weird, just kind of like sitting out there and it's like the town has it.
Hanging loose.
How did they find?
Well, I'm sure that, I mean, you got landowners on both sides, so I'm sure there's gonna be some interesting properties. I'm good.
Moving on to Article 7, these were the numbers I received from CPC for their accounts, that it's an annual article and they just update it with what when they talk with Ms. Royer for the latest numbers.
I got an email from the community on community preservation. When was the last time they met? Do we know that?
They were
I've
supposed
heard
to,
they've had some issues with quorum.
correct, and that's why when I get to Article 9, they weren't able to act on some articles that they wanted to bring based on a placeholder that they sent over to me.
Yep.
Due to a lack of quorum.
I mean,
Something,
absolutely.
we have to work on that.
I mean, the only thing that works against them is the 48-hour rule. They can make a meeting. They can make a meeting that they can all settle on meeting, whether who's the chair right now?
John,
Mr. Henson.
Is it John? Okay, I was gonna guess that.
they had a meeting posted for the 10th, March 10th,
That's the one that they.
but they didn't end up, they posted it.
Terry and I
The one
talked
that-
about it.
Yeah, I had it, someone from the community and said, this isn't right, this is something that needs to be acted on, so. I mean, they should-
Did they cancel it online, Holly, or no?
Oh,
So they posted, people came, and the room was empty. Is that what you're
they
saying?
only had 4, Holly.
They
the
didn't
meeting?
have, yeah.
They
That's
need to have a
not
meeting.
good PR.
I mean,
I know one.
Is there
member
time?
had surgery.
I mean. is
Not for
there-
the annual. And
That
by
shit
me
is
putting
passed.
a placeholder, I was really stretching it out for them, because technically everything's due by January 4th, I believe. It's a deadline for the
Right.
annual town meeting, so I was doing my best to try to keep a placeholder for them, but I got to finalize the warrant, and I just, I need to follow up with
The thing that's. When is advisory? When is this due to advisory?
we have to get it to them by April 10th. Because our next meeting's not till April 13th. So it has to be on the next meeting agenda by bylaw.
I mean, what if they met before our next meeting?
Well, our next select board meeting is next week on the 23rd. They
Right.
have to post. Wednesday. They have to post tomorrow for either Monday or Tuesday. I don't even know.
That would help.
what's in the room.
Yeah, because we meet again next Wednesday.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's try and pull the Doug Flutie Hail Mary. here. Seriously, I mean,
That would help.
I don't know if I have John's number, but
Well, Justice could reach out to him because he's support for them, so.
They're meeting next Thursday?
Yeah, they're meeting what, the 24th, Justice?
24th, I think.
There's people in here Monday and Tuesday next week.
Oh, so you could.
Yeah, there's conservation on Monday and
can
planning
they
board on
meet,
Tuesday.
can they meet remote? That's been extended, the remote quorum. Allow them to just meet remote.
That's more of a question with Steve, and his staff. I can't, I would have to
Oh,
check.
I see what
Yeah.
you're saying. The right thing is to get them to meet. However, we can try and facilitate that. What are the other 2 meetings on Monday and Tuesday?
What are they?
Yeah,
There's conservation and planning board.
You're both recorded.
What if they met at 5 on Wednesday?
Yeah, even if they met prior or something, let's just talk with Mr. Henshaw and see what they can pull out. I mean, all they need to do is vote
You mean Mr. Kaplan's?
Or are you talking about the
No,
other
or
committee?
you're talking
I'm
about-
talking about
Talking
CPC,
about
John
CPC.
Henshaw.
I'm on CPC.
Oh, I thought we were talking about
CPC.
advisory.
No, CPC, to try to get
We're on
them
the
to meet.
CPC.
I want them to meet.
Yeah.
So they can, vote on, no, that's all right. It's quite all right.
It's
So-
okay.
Oh, my.
So Mr. Henshaw can wind up getting people together, getting it posted in time, and then have it meet at a convenient time so TCTV can support it. I believe we're still covered by the extension of the quorum rule, so they can meet online. It's just having TCTV facilitate the meeting.
Yeah.
If all they need to do is vote on this to get it on the warrant, and then send you send us the language, then that would be,
Yeah, but I have to get the packet out to the board by policy by tomorrow.
Well, technically by Friday by policy, but our last work day is tomorrow, so. And the CPC is already.
Once
two
again, a good
votes.
reason to go to 5 days.
Well, CPC would have to meet. But I mean, they can't.
let's take
How
it
many
off.
are on how many are on CPC?
So that's a
Extension is through
question.
July 25th.
I'm hearing-
Adam, do you want to take this
I'm
off?
hearing there
We can
was a
figure out what we can do.
resignation, so I don't even know,
I mean, I already
not
have
from
the
the
board
elected members, but from
finalized.
someone on adjunct.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm not.
You want us to
sure.
vote tonight?
9 people, it's supposed to be 9.
This
on
was
Is that
it.
what you
9,
want?
So the quorum is.
So
Do you want us to
5, but-
say
If
it's good?
somebody resign,
We have too many
Nine, I know.
conversations.
No, the board's
Surgery?
voting on this Wednesday, but
Then let's see what we can
5, it
do.
don't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many, it matters what the seats are.
If offline, if we talk about it and it's not feasible, then
Bylaw
fine.
is 9,
But you don't need to vote for the board. I can work
5
with you
people
on
there.
this.
or you don't
All
have.
right,
a quorum.
let's move on.
Sounds good.
We're gonna try and work on it.
Yeah.
Okay, Article 7. We already talked to it, 450, got it.
anything else? Okay. Article 8, Community Preservation Act Study Appropriation. This is for the CPC voted already for this one, for them to conduct a study on the current emergency management building, for them to get an architect for specifications, estimates, and a plan. They want to see if town meeting would support it for the study, so they didn't use the money out of their administrative budget. They decided to put an article in front of town meeting.
It's
Yeah,
a
we'll figure out.
historic structure.
Good. Anything else on Article 8?
Nope.
Article 10, this is the Templeton Scholarship Fund. This is an annual article.
It's fine.
I know we talked about something during our budget meeting, but that's something we can visit later about splitting. I forget exactly what I said. I have to take a look at my notes, but this is good to go.
Article 11, property valuation account. This is the article, the annual article from the Board of Assessors. Article, anything on Article 11?
No.
Article 12, the fiscal year 2023 sewer department operating budget.
This is not the time.
This is for the cost operate the sewer, the sewer budget enterprise fund. Any question on this one?
Hmm.
Sewer commission?
I don't think so.
No,
Article 13, the sewer capital project. Article. This is actually going to be 210,000. There's going to be an additional appropriation for the transformer and for the recirc water system that they found out about. So this one will be 210,000, the final one, but it'll include those two capital items on there right now. And those two items that I'm mentioning now was presented to the Capital Improvements Committee this last the fiscal year 22 or 21. It was presented to capital.
Okay, so 210 is gonna be the total.
210 will be the total. Okay. Article 14, the cable department operating budget. Any questions on this?
As brief, right?
will be up to 272 because he has the full timer in there, so he's got to cover the insurance. If they need insurance, it'll be in his budget. If he doesn't use it, then he'll just roll into his retained earnings. It's like his free cash.
Yeah.
Anything else on cable department operating budget?
No.
Okay. Article 15, set the salaries of elected town officials. This is for the operating budget, the town clerk, and then each of the select board members.
Copy.
Anything else on that? Okay, Article 16, this is to set the salaries of elected town officials for our enterprise. The water commissioners each 2,550 yearly, and the sewer commissioners each 3,000 yearly.
Good to go.
Nothing else on that?
And then if you look above Article 15, we get 500 years. Just saying, they're all in line.
Article
A lot of
17,
money.
set the salaries of elected town officials, light department, 2,550 yearly, light commissioner each. Because you get the light, they're light and water commissioners, so they get 5,100 a year.
Got it.
From the information I have. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. Article 18, this is the funding for the ambulance department operations. This is the number that we went through at the budget. I intend to keep it at that 290, 250, even though there was some discussion on including more personnel in there. I think this is the fiscally prudent way to do it, is to see how it does. And then if it stabilizes, excuse me, if it holds, the receipts keep coming in, then we could look at including more costs moving forward. But first year since it was a decision of the board to break this out, I think this is a good start. Anything on this?
Nope, that's what was briefed to us on Saturday.
Article 19, that I look at as the appropriation number the board instructed me to come to, 9,945,395, and that's the number that we will do. And there's no transfer, obviously, because the ambulance is broken out into a different article. Anything on the budget? We're good?
We're good.
Okay. Okay, Article 20, this is the Art Infrastructure Stabilization Fund. This, a lot of folks on this board have a priority to look at establishing a fund for purpose of constructing, maintaining, and repairing roads, bridges, and sidewalks. And this will give us another mechanism that we can do to establish this fund. And outside of our Chapter 90 and using other funds, this will be another account that we could use as a resource to fund our infrastructure. Anything else on this article? Excuse me. None. Okay. Article 21, the draft warrant deposits the general fund stabilization OPEB accounts. This article will get us that 1.5 million or OPEX stabilization. Anything on this one? Nope. Okay, moving on to Article 22. If I remember when we went to town meeting for the trackless multi-purpose vehicle, we told town meeting, or I believe we told town meeting, or told the select board, I forgot where it was off the top of my head. But whatever the difference was, we would deposit back into the CapEx. At least I believe that was the intention. Any problems with that article? That's the leftover funds from the purchase of the
Yeah.
trackless. Okay.
But yeah, your point was where it was gonna go.
Correct.
Okay, no, right back. I don't have anything.
Article 23, this is to amend the fiscal year 21 capital budget. This would, the Royalston Road title work, we would strike that and insert Royalston Road title appraisal work. I got roughly 15,000 still in that article after some title work. So this could be a good use of the rest of those funds for the appraisals for Royalston Road, because we're expected to do that as part of the TIP program. It's on the list for fiscal year 2026. We
It
can't do
just
it.
increases the scope of the authorization.
Correct.
Okay.
And if we have money there, why appropriate more money when we make use of the money we already have appropriated? Anything else on that one? Article 24, this is to amend the fiscal year 22 capital budget. This, because we received the vehicle from the light department. We could strike that 25,000 for that shared vehicle and amend it to a light duty pickup. H1 replacement to increase that to 44,500, 10,000 of that, and by adding DPW building and grounds for improvements to Gilman Way building of $15,000 to make use of that item that was contained within the fiscal year 22 capital budget.
There you go.
Okay. This is for the fiscal year 23 capital budget of 50,000 for the police vehicle. And I've updated it with at the bottom there, you see from certified free cash, you'll see that on the final one. Got to give credit to Justice because he was looking through it and said, hey, there's something missing here.
Kudos.
So it was caught.
Okay.
Fiscal year 2023 special article. You see here the street sign replacement. That's something we want to do throughout the town to get all of our signs up to code within all the guide rules and regulations. So that's 7,500 for that. I've also updated this because I'm going to need another item within the special article to include select the department to expend select board of planning for Laurel View Road for the title work and the engineering of another 7,000 there. So that article is going to be 14,500 that I'll be bringing to town meeting. You folks are aware, the planning board voted 3-2 to waive the conditions conditioned upon that it could be conveyed to the town. So before the vote goes forward, the work still needs to get done for us to move forward on that. So the money's got to come from somewhere.
So that'll be itemized there.
That'll be itemized below the street sign replacement.
Okay.
Anything else on that article?
No.
No.
Okay, senior community center roof replacement. This is the article for $140,000 for the roof over at the senior center. The architect projected 200,000. We still have $60,000 of articles on the books for improvements to the senior center. So this will bring us to our $200,000 for the roof.
It's coming out of CapEx.
CapEx stabilization. And we'll still have roughly $100,000 in that account. So we're staying pretty.
Okay.
Article 28, I just got the language back. We had to send it off to bond council for approval for the water department's debt authorization. And we will have that finalized on the warrant for the $2.2 million that they're looking out, going out to debt for.
Most of the other ones that
Correct.
in our packet by Monday. We'll see the language.
It's already
Okay,
my draft.
got it.
Monty Tech's article for Monty Tech. This is an updated to reflect their assessment that we got. That was a number before we received that pleasant news.
So it's 603,535.
Correct.
Copy.
Any other questions on that one? Article 30, NRSD, that number stayed the same. Article. And then Article 31, rescission of authorized but unissued debt. We have over $1 million here of unissued debt that we could get off of our books. This helps the town overall. We've been cleaning these up. I've been working with the treasurer collector on these. And I think we'll be all caught up with these cleanups, which will certainly help the town.
Questions on that?
And then Stonebridge Road, just talked with town council. They're still working on language on how they're gonna approach this for the town to vote on it, because we're trying to figure out how the language is gonna work. So this might be held off till the fall. But at some point it'll have to go to town meeting, so. Based on the advice of town council, because we're trying to figure out the language we're gonna use without giving up the road to the abutters, so.
Okay.
It's some legal stuff that,
Is there any criticality there? We can wait.
well, it's an interesting question because select board voted on this a while back, and I think Tim brought it up to me too. This is something I personally believe needs to go in front of town meeting for a vote. If you're looking at not doing a bridge, but doing a walkway, if you're gonna
Right.
not have a road there. It's just a matter of how we get that question or vote to town meeting, and we have to work that out.
What did we authorize? I thought, did we do a one lane?
It was a walking path.
Really? We did a walking path? I
It
thought
was like a conservation walking path area.
for emergency purposes, we did a one
Yeah, I
lane.
thought we did emergency.
I thought we did a one lane, yeah, for the emergency
Yeah,
thing.
that's what I
No,
thought we did.
That's what my recollection. I don't.
Mine too.
But it wasn't for,
I don't remember what year.
it wasn't for cars to be going up and down,
Correct.
basically. So,
Basically,
No,
right,
but it was going to be. if-
emergency
like there were
only.
bid, I remember the brief distinctly because they had bollards that they
Yeah,
could
right.
insert. And if they needed to remove them to get across, they would be able to do that. Otherwise, it was only a walking bridge. So maybe that may cause us to think of it a little bit differently. So I'd have to go back to look at that. But if we have to. I mean, it's not operable, so I guess we can wait. If we have to
Well,
get the language.
and Bob went already to the the Conservation Commission, and he already opened it up, so it's not gonna have any issues because of the roadway was kind of collapsing in and
Okay.
creating another issue, so.
Okay,
If there is some kind of storm, at least the water's going through and
understood.
for the time being, but that is something I think, personally, I think has to go to town meeting.
My understanding, doing some research, it exceeds the board's capability to make such a change.
Mhm.
Since we are potentially eliminating a road that really needs to go to the town meeting floor.
And I agree with Tim's assumption of that, because if you're gonna be selling town lands, any type of that has to go to town meeting, so.
Again, dot the i's, cross the t's, let's do it correctly and not have to backpedal and figure out how to correct the mistake.
So that's that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I got a problem.
Okay.
I misspoke, I think. I must have read it over too many times. On Article 3 on the advisory bylaw, on section 9.4, it still has the wording of a notice of a hearing by inserting in the local newspaper, and I swear got rid of that. So
Good thing, good catch. If you could just go through it really, at some point and
I'll do it tonight when I get home.
as long as I get it for tomorrow, I could just update it.
I was
in what,
reading,
9.4, right?
back through that, and I swear I got rid of that. Because I thought at an advisory committee meeting where they talked about it, I thought they liked getting rid of, but I swear.
Oh,
swear
you know
we got-
what? I think you updated it after.
Well, we had two meetings, we talked
Yes.
about it a couple times at the meeting, and I think the second time, I swear I got rid of that. We voted to get rid of
I
that.
remember that.
So we wouldn't have to, one, you don't have to spend the money on newspaper ad, and two, it gives them more of a leeway and time frame for them to have for advisory to have their meetings. It was worded for a public meeting
Yeah.
where all persons wanted to be heard will be heard.
It was just that one sentence, right, Jeff?
I think,
You could just double check it to your draft, what you have.
I'll as soon as I get home, I'm gonna look at it, because otherwise it'll bug me all night. I just- No,
It's on
I was
page
just reading through it
280.
again, and I swear that got taken out.
Okay.
So we wouldn't want two things. We wouldn't have to spend the money on advertising in the newspaper, which I don't know how many people buy the Gad News these days anyway, or looks at it online, but, and two, it would ease up the time frame for the advisory committee, where they wouldn't have to be thinking like 2 week, because you got to get an ad in, then they send it back to you so you can proofread it, and then you got to look at it and say, okay, boom. And there's been a mix up before, where they'll say, hey, where's your ad? Or chasing the bill for, months. The Gateway, I swear
I think this was the first cut of it. It might be updated in the final. If you could just take it, because you got the other one that you sent to the advisory committee, and that one I think has this language
Yeah,
out
I
of
think
it.
there's a few versions of it, and I think there's, yeah, I can.
So just double check that.
That
Never
just
got the
bugs me.
master, just go into the master.
Well, Jeff's gonna double check it too,
Okay.
and we'll figure it out, but then finalize.
I swear.
And that's on page 284 of the print, 293 of the PDF.
Correct. Yeah, good catch. We'll correct that.
Anything else, Jeff?
I'll have to look now when I get home and look at my Word.
Okay.
But I just. What was I doing? I was checking revolving funds, and I just saw that.
So maybe you're good. Good.
I'm good.
And Jeff's just gonna check on article. what was it, three? Okay. I think we're good. I don't think we need to. Jeff was trying to finish his thought when we had the Monty Tech people. We were talking about floating hours. I don't think we need to talk it in there. I didn't have anything, so when that first 15 minutes of the meeting, I brought up two different things. You took care of the first one. We had the discussion on the second one. I'm still gonna think through it. I don't know if you needed to.
Yeah,
think-
because Monty Tech got interrupted.
Right, I don't know if you want to finish your thought.
That's out in space right now, but I'll get the Rolodex and crank it back up when I get home.
So no, I don't
Tim
think we
knows.
needed any go backs unless someone else had notes that they wanted to review from the Saturday meeting.
Ollie Justice.
So, check
All right, our next meeting is March 23rd.
May.
She's ready for town meeting.
I don't know if I have questions. I'm trying to think of
Um,
what word my question.
You want to hang on?
No, that's okay.
Okay, next meeting is March 23rd. And we'll talk with conservation and figure out anything. If there's an opportunity there, CPC.
I messed up too. I said advisory, you're saying.
I know.
Long day, long day.
Okay. Oh, motion to adjourn. Second. Motion, second. All right, on the motion to adjourn, how do you vote? Jeff?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And I vote yes, we are adjourned.